And on to our continuing focus right here on WION World is One, the latest from the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's visit to India. Pompeo earlier in the morning met Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his New Delhi residence. The high-level meeting was meant to build the ground for Prime Minister Modi's meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump that is scheduled to take place later this week in Osaka in Japan. The two leaders discussed a whole range of issues, including Iran oil and India's S-400 deal with Russia. Pompeo will be also meeting his Indian counterpart, S. Jaishnakar, in a while from now. The two sides will then release press statements at 2 p.m. IST. Pompeo also made a stop over to Afghanistan, where he met the country's President Ashraf Ghani shortly before landing in India. This is a crucial visit, given that it follows Mike Pompeo's short but significant stopovers in West Asia. Pompeo's visit to India only comes ahead of the G20 summit in Osaka. Diplomatic sources have told WION that U.S.-Iran tensions will feature prominently as a part of the agenda. Remember, United States has refused to extend Iran trade waiver to India. Iran was India's second largest oil supplier last year. Diplomatic sources have told WION that Jaishankar will speak with Mike Pompeo about alternatives for India's oil imports. WION has also learned that Indian officials have already spoken with their Iranian counterparts about the current situation. New Delhi has asked both Tehran and Washington to refrain from escalating the situation any further. According to sources, S. Jaishankar will also raise the issue of the S-400 missile system with Mike Pompeo. Jaishankar is likely to tell Mike Pompeo that India has a long-standing defense relationship with Russia and that New Delhi went ahead with the deal, keeping in mind the country's security needs. Remember, India struck a deal with Russia on the purchase of the S-400 system despite U.S. sanctions on Russia. So basically, by signing that S-400 deal, India risked triggering CAATSA, or the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. U.S. has repeatedly stated that India should look for an alternative. However, India has made it clear that it has no plans to scrap that S-400 deal. And all eyes on the G20 summit that is scheduled to begin later this week in Osaka in Japan. The theme of this year's summit is Human-Centered Future Society, and the focus will be on a range of issues including digital economy and artificial intelligence. The city of Osaka will soon be witnessing leaders from across the globe descend, and the who's who of global politics will take over the streets in what is the biggest summit this year. Schools have been closed, security has been tightened, as security officials expect an extra 30,000 people approximately to be present in the city. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be visiting Japan for 2 days, the 28th and the 29th of June, to participate in that summit. This will be the 6th G20 that he is participating in since 2014 and the first in his second term. New Delhi is expected to strongly raise the issue of economic offenders and black money.
We are very keen that the economic offenders and those who are the perpetrators of economic crimes, the holders of black money, should be brought to book. Those who are running away from India should be brought back, and no country should provide them shelter.
Other than this, climate change, countering terrorism and WTO reforms will be the other focus for India. The summit is taking place in the backdrop of a trade war between world's #1 and #2 economies, the US and China, and Washington's diminishing commitment to the World Trade Organization.
See, India is of a strong view that global trade should be free from any restrictions, encumbrances. Multilateralism should prevail. It should happen under the aegis of World Trade Organization. The reforming World Trade Organization is necessary, but it should happen in a way that all the countries in the world will have a right to decide how it should be. The WTO should be a forum for growth, forum for equity, forum for inclusiveness.
And as always, Prime Minister Modi will be holding meetings with several leaders. He will be meeting Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, US President Donald Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Chinese President Xi Jinping. During last year's summit in the Argentinian capital, Prime Minister Modi met leaders under the JAI, or Japan-America-India grouping, the RIC, or the Russia, India, and China grouping, and a permanent fixture has been the informal BRICS summit. But the key focus will also be on the much talked about meeting between US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, aimed at resolving issues on trade. Remember, trade friction has been escalating between the two sides. The US-Iran tiff is, of course, also expected to feature prominently during the discourse. And WION's diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibbal, has been getting us the very latest ahead of the G20 summit from Osaka in Japan.
Well, of course, it's G20 and the global economics and politics will be dominating the summit. We know that the summit is happening in the backdrop of tensions between Iran and US in the Gulf, and of course the tensions between US and China on the issue of trade. It's a full-blown trade war between Beijing and Washington, and we know there will be an important bilateral between US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. So that will be the focus. This grouping, of course, was formed in the backdrop of the 2008 financial crisis, and since then it has evolved into an economic and political bloc which has a major role to play, given the fact that it contributes 85% of the global GDP, 75% of the global trade, and almost 2/3 of the global population lives in this grouping.